Hello everybody, this is City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the April My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. For the April kits, we got this beautiful collection made by Prima called Watercolor Floral, and I'm using one of the more solid papers here, and I am putting some gesso on it. My plan is to make a wreath of flowers, but not make the wreath go all the way around, almost make it kind of like a crescent moon shape. And I am putting some gesso down to kind of guide me as to where I'm going to place all of the items that will make up the wreath. So I'm just using some white gesso, and you can see here that I'm just using my finger to spread it around, and I'm just kind of eyeballing where I think the flowers that I'm going to use should go. The photo that I'm using here is one of my older daughter and me. It's not the best photo of me, but it's such a great photo of my older daughter, so I wanted to use it. And I like that we had this picture together and we had a really fun time this day. So I figured, good picture or not, I'm going to use it. The flowers that I'm using here are flowers that I fussy cut from a 12 by 12 piece of paper that was in the kit. The whole page was covered with these gorgeous flowers, and you could see that they're different colors of blue and different colors of lavender. So I'm thinking here that I want to put the larger flowers in the center, and then as you get to the end of either, I guess you could say, point on the crescent, I want to use the smaller flowers. I also fussy cut out some gold leaves. You can see there's a couple that I placed on there. I'm going to add some more a little later. And now I'm just kind of playing around with the composition. But other than a few minor adjustments, this is how that crescent shape is going to stay. So now I'm using Tim Holtz Distress Oxide in Blueprint Sketch, and I'm using my dauber, and I am inking the edges of all the flowers. And I thought that this color just did wonders for all those flowers. I feel like they became so vibrant when this color was added, especially to the light blue and the lavender flowers. So I cut out some of that, but I did go around to every single flower that was on the layout, and I inked the edges. And I just love the way that looked, and I use this Blueprint Sketch color throughout the month for my layouts because it was such a good complement to this set of pattern papers. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to attach my flowers down to the background paper. And I'm popping up some of them, and some of them I'm leaving flat. So I'm going to start by popping up the first one, and I use ATG adhesive to attach those down. And then I'm going to kind of go back and forth between popping up the flowers and leaving them flat. There isn't a set pattern in which ones I pop up and which ones I don't. I just kind of get an idea of what I like and which individual flowers I think would look best with some foam behind them. Sometimes when I'm doing something that's repetitive, I will cut some of the footage out, but for this particular video, I thought that I would include the footage of me arranging the flowers and attaching them down. I just felt like a lot of the decision-making process would be missing from the video if I did that. So you can always fast forward. I'm going to actually go through the process of attaching them down to the page. So you could see that I attached the first two I popped up. That darker blue one I attached flat, and then I popped up the next one, and it looks like I'm popping up the next one too. And I spent a lot of time making little minor adjustments. I feel that the slightest little change can sometimes make a big difference in how the layout looks and whether or not I feel it's successful. So I think it's worth it to take the time to do that. I also like to use the ATG adhesive because I do tend to move things around a lot. I know I mentioned that in a lot of my videos, but I just think it's important to mention that that is the reason that I don't use glue. Every time that I decide I'm just going to go ahead and glue things down, and I don't either think about it enough or I don't give myself enough time to decide if that's really where I wanted to put something, I tend to regret it. So I do like the option of being able to switch things a little bit. Of course, you could always rip the papers when you're moving things around, but I find that that doesn't happen that much with the ATG adhesive. So it's my favorite. I like to be able to change my mind. I love so many of the manufacturers that create pattern paper. The Prima paper I really love because I love the way there's always so many images to fussy cut out. This layout was made with a piece of pattern paper in the background, and then, as I said before, all of these flowers, they're all fussy cut out from a piece of pattern paper, and I just love that about their papers. I look through the papers when I get them and I decide which of the papers are going to remain whole and which of them are going to be fussy cut out. And as soon as I saw this particular paper, I just got out my scissors and started cutting. I didn't even plan, I didn't even think about it. I knew that this was a page that needed to be cut into its, a fussy cut into its individual flowers. For some of the other papers, like the 49 and Market and to some extent the Blue Fern Studios, they're very different. I find that I want to use those papers more as a whole and add some embellishments, but I don't find myself fussy cutting too much with those brands. But I guess in the end, it all depends on the individual papers and the photos that you're scrapbooking. So now that I have all of those fussy cut flowers attached down to the background, I am adding a few of the Prima, those paper flowers. And I just use a little ATG adhesive to hold those down temporarily. And I will go back later on and use some heavy gel medium in with a matte finish to really anchor them down so that they won't come off. But like I said, I'm not 100% sure yet. I just placed them down, so I want to have that option to make some switches. Now I'm working on my photo. First, I mounted it on some plain white cardstock. It's kind of a thick cardstock that I use. And then I popped it up on a sheet of fun foam, that self-adhesive foam that you can get in the kids section of the craft store. I took this little die cut, it says The Best Adventure, and I trimmed off the white that was around the edge, and then I used the Distress Oxide, again in a blueprint sketch, to ink the edges. And now I'm popping it up on some more of that foam, and that's going to serve as my title. Now, it doesn't really look like we're having much of an adventure here. So the title, The Best Adventure, might seem a little funny, but we were actually at something that was kind of unusual. It was an oddities fair. I believe it was the first one that they had in the country. It was held in Brooklyn, New York, and my daughter saw something on Instagram, and we decided to go to this oddities, I guess it was a fair or some kind of small convention. So they had some interesting things there, some very unusual artwork. They had some like creepy dolls and clothing, some like unusual jewelry, and I remember they had like gas masks and just a lot of like Halloween horror kind of related things. So my daughter picked out some postcards, and she also got, you know, those ink blot tests they used to have where there's an image, and you if you were taking the test, you would say like what it looked like to you. They had some of those there, and just an odd assortment of different things. So we had a really great time. We have a good time, I feel like, wherever we go. It was definitely interesting. And the only thing was that initially it was really, really, really crowded, like super like wall-to-wall crowded, and you really couldn't even move around. You couldn't get near the tables, but it emptied out after a while. And it was definitely an adventure. So that's a very long explanation for that title that I chose. You can see here that I added some florals around the page. I die cut some florals, and then I just trimmed them down a little bit, and I just spread them around the wreath. And then I cut back a few of those little flowers that were by my daughter's face because they were just, kind of too far into the picture. And for this bow here, I'm just cutting off the white border. Sometimes I want to have a white border because, I want to be able to separate the die cut from something in the background. So I think it's good to have it, and then if you don't want it, you can just cut it off. And again, I am inking the edges with this dauber full of Distress Oxide. And I'm going to also pop up the bow to give it a little bit extra dimension, just cutting some really thin strips. And I was glad that I happened to pull out some white foam for this layout, because whenever I have to cut some very thin strips, it's nice to either have a matching color or a neutral color. There's times when I've used like bright green and then I didn't cut it thin enough and you could see it from the front. So I try to keep that in mind when I choose my foam color for something that's super thin. So here I am spreading some more of those gold leaves around the page. Those were fussy cut out from I believe the same page as the flowers. Now I'm adding some pearls to the background. I have these pearls in several different sizes, and I think they're just the right color to match in with this collection. So I'm just kind of sprinkling those around the layout. And again, I'm putting the smaller pearls where the flowers are a little thinner, and I'm putting the larger pearls where the cluster of flowers is a little bit thicker. I use an EK Success photo corner punch. You could see it off to the right there, and I punched out a few photo corners from my picture. And like all the other paper on the page, I am using the dauber to ink the edges of the photo corners. I did that already, and now I am inking the edges, or I just inked the edges of these little flowers. And some of these were fussy cut, and some of them were part of the die cut pack. But I just thought it would be nice to kind of extend the wreath out a little bit. I like to have kind of a transition area where there is a kind of a light sprinkling of embellishments around any large clusters that I have, or large elements. So now I'm using this, as you could see, beautiful, very detailed piece of chipboard. I put some white gesso on it, and the glue is liquid glue in a little dauber bottle. So I put some glue all over the top of it, and then I put some white embossing powder on it, and then I just use my heat gun to emboss the white embossing powder. And I went to put some more adhesive on it, and I realized I did not wait long enough, and it made a little bit of a mess. So I fixed that, and now I'm adding a little bit of this very pretty lavender embossing powder. And I don't really have a ton of different colors of embossing powder, so I was really happy to have a color that matched so well with the collection. This is an embossing powder from Michaels. It's Recollections brand. I'm just heating that up with my heat gun, and it fit perfectly next to the photo. So I use some ATG adhesive and I put it down. And this is the part where I decide that I had to cut down the layout. Everything was too far to the right. There was no fixing it. There was no moving it over. Everything had been attached down. So I decided that I would cut some paper off of the left side of the paper and then put a border around the page. And at first I was going to have that purplish border, and then I changed my mind and I decided to use this pink, which is the same paper that's on the background. Luckily, there was an extra sheet of it, so I cut it into some strips, and I'm just making a little frame, and then this will help me to conserve that paper. So in order to make that little frame in the background, I cut out 4 strips of paper. 2 of them I just attached down as solids, and then 2 I angled the corners at about 45 degrees and attached those down. So now there's a little frame, and now I've attached down my layout, and I like that much better. There's still a little bit of room on the left, but I feel like it looks more centered. Then, of course, once I glued it down, not before, I decided that, ooh, wouldn't it look nice to have some of the blueprint sketch Distress Oxide all around that tattered edge. So I took my dauber, I added a little bit, and I liked the way it looked. So then I continued, and I pulled up the edge of the paper, and I went all around the outside. Once I went all the way around the inside paper, I then decided that I would do the same all the way around the outside paper. It's not going to be super noticeable in photos of the layout, but it will be noticeable in person. So I decided to do that as well. I was thinking that I needed to add something to the left of the photo. The chipboard is there, and I think that I'm happy with that, but I just wanted to add something more. I was thinking maybe of adding another title or a larger title, And then I decided that I was going to make use of this butterfly stamp that was in the collection. So I heat embossed using some white embossing powder on some vellum. I also tried out some other colors too. I did some different colors of gold, but I like the white on this layout. And so I folded that in half and I attached that down. Folding it gives it a little bit of dimension. Now I'm adding some pearls to the background. I added some little tiny pearls to each of the photo corners, and now I'm using them to embellish this piece of chipboard. And I just love adding these small pearls. I feel like it just adds another texture and another bit of dimension and detail to the layout. Now I'm using a detail brush and I am adding some Bow Bunny glitter paste in the color Sugar to all of the Prima flowers that are on the background, and also to those floral die cuts in white that are on the background. And this adds a nice shimmer to whatever you put it on. I don't think that it makes a huge difference, especially in the photographs, but I do think that it adds a nice little touch. So this is something that I've been doing lately. I just like to add a little extra glitter and sparkle to the layout. And I don't feel like this has to be applied perfectly, just a little bit in each area makes a nice shimmer. Then I decided to put some pearls down the center of the butterfly, and that completes the layout, everybody. Thank you so much for watching my video, everybody. I hope if you like it, you'll give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, I hope you will consider subscribing to my channel. I will put the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website in the description box, and you can check out all of the beautiful kits. As I said, this is the limited edition kit, but they have plenty of others. I hope everybody has a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.